What's going on, folks? Ted from Immersion here, and we are going to dive into the last bit of the Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen coverage. I had pretty much done all of it, but the last little bit escaped me there, and now the book's out. But either way, this will also mean there won't potentially be too much in the way of spoilers. We're going to talk about what the monsters are, but people have actually had the book in hand for a little bit, so that's cool. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and dive in. So I should say that this is Appendix B called Friends and Foes. It's nice to see that at the start they actually do give us a breakdown to show us what the different monsters are by the different types, right? Construct, Dragonoid, Humanoid, Dragon, Humanoid, Monstrosity, and Undead. They also give us a nice little random encounter table here, which this is not a huge thing, but I actually do really appreciate this. Random encounter tables, I think, can really make or break a campaign, especially if the party sends you off on a place you weren't planning to go or something like that. This could be a really huge benefit on what you want to do, and just, hey, we need something, let's just roll real quick and come up with something. So we'll roll right into the, I think it's the Onkolox, which is this pretty nasty looking like undead hedgehog creature. So, vicious undead creatures creature from the bones of bears and other beasts. So not necessarily hedgehogs. They are huge in size. Pretty terrifying looking. Again, they are undead, so they have unusual nature and some kind of pretty standard immunities here, right? Poison, charmed, exhausted, frightened. They make 2 claw attacks and 1 entrapping rend. The claw attacks just do 2d10 plus 6 piercing, but if you're large or smaller, you must make a strength saving throw or be pushed up to 20 feet in a horizontal direction of its choice. Interesting that the claw is like a battering thing. And then it has entrapping rend, which I think you can kind of guess what that's about here, which does 5d6 plus 6 piercing, and if they're large or smaller, they must succeed on a strength saving throw or be trapped within the rib cage, which causes them to be grappled, and while they're grappled, they are restrained, and it can't entrap another creature. We have Caradoc, which is not a Caradoc. Caradoc is a specific character, and this obviously has to deal with some, again, spoilers for this. But I can't say it's a huge spoiler, because Wizards of the Coast spoiled it pretty much before the book even came out, which I thought was interesting on their Twitter page. But it's the seneschal of Lord Soth and former knight of Salamnia. Caradoc burned when Dargard Keep was consumed in the fires of the Cataclysm. As with many of his retainers, Caradoc was cursed with undeath, being duplicitous and cowardly at his core. He didn't turn into a skeletal knight, but rather an intangible spirit. As such, he basically can possess people or change his appearance, right? He is tethered to his scorched bones, which collects dust in Dargard Keep. He can leave the cursed castle while possessing the body of a humanoid. So in a lot of ways, he is very similar to a ghost. A little bit stronger, though, than your traditional ghost. It's basically all of the resistances and immunities that ghosts have. Does have a fly speed. You can see 110 hit points. Bound haunting, right? We talked about how he's bound to the keep. At the start of his turn, if he's outside the keep's walls and not possessing a creature, he must make a charisma saving throw or vanish and reappear within the keep. So if you can turn him out of somebody or expel him, then keep him out of somebody's body and keep him from possessing someone, he'll teleport back to the keep. Incorporeal movement. If he dies, he reforms in 2d6 days in the keep. Has unusual nature. Withering touch, again, standard ghost stuff. 2d10 plus 4 necrotic damage. Has a possession ability, which is a DC 15. Again, pretty much the standard version of what you would expect a ghost to have. It does say he can't be targeted by attacked, except ones that turn undead, and he retains his alignment, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma scores, immunity to frightened and charmed, and the divine whispers ability, which we'll talk about here in a second. And again, if the body's dropped, all the standard ways to get a ghost out of somebody when they're possessing him. But he does have as a bonus action, divisive whispers, my mistake. He magically whispers to one creature within 60 feet. That target must make a DC 15 wisdom saving throw or immediately use its reaction to make a melee attack against another creature of Caradoc's choice, wasting its reaction if there is nothing else. Then we have the Death Dragon, which is a really awesome new dragon type here, right? So Death Dragons are the undead skeletal remains of a metallic or chromatic dragon infused with the lingering fires of the Cataclysm by foul magic. Again, this is obviously very specific to the world of Krynn and post-Cataclysm Krynn at that. So this might not necessarily be in the lore here, how it fits into your game. But if you're obviously playing Dragonlance, then go for it. But if you want to use Death Dragons in your game, you obviously can make up whatever kind of lore and stuff you want for them. The thing to consider is that they are different than a Dracolich, right? A Dracolich is a very specific situation where a dragon undergoes the process of achieving lichdom, creating a phylactery and all that. This is not the same thing. This is sort of draconic energy infused with some sort of specific catalyzing event, in this case the Cataclysm's fire, right? So their bones burn with violet cataclysmic fire, which can unleash in a horrific mockery of a breath weapon. And then you can see we have two options, greater and lesser. We'll just cover the greater here. So it's an undead creature. It has resistance to piercing damage, immunity to necrotic poison, exhausted in a poison condition. Has blind sight, no true sight for these guys, but blind sight. Legendary resistance, unusual nature, can make a bite and a claw attack. This is more along the lines of, seemingly, at least what's written here, more along the lines of now, it says it's chromatic or metallic, but the abilities and things here lean more chromatic, in my opinion, because the bite does piercing damage, but also does additional necrotic damage. If the creature is larger or smaller, they are grappled and restrained. The claws just do slashing damage, and then it has the cataclysmic breath, which is a 60-foot cone of purple flames. The creatures in the area must make a dexterity saving throw or take 10d8 necrotic damage on a failure, half on a success. And if it reduces the creature to 0 hit points, any medium or smaller humanoid killed from the breath weapon is raised as a zombie under the dragon's control. And then it has legendary actions, right? 3 of those, 1 to make a claw attack and 2 to do cataclysmic rush. It moves up to half its flying speed without provoking attacks of opportunity. During this move, if it enters the space of a medium or smaller creature, they take a d8 necrotic damage. It can only do this once per turn. Next up, we have Draconians. Now, I went back and checked because I was like, oh, maybe these are just going to be reprints of the Fizzban's Draconians. These look to be, as far as I could tell, all different Draconians, at least in naming anyway. So I believe we have just 2 distinct sets of Draconians, which is cool. So if you were planning to use Draconians outside of just these in your Dragonlance campaign, you can always pull the ones from Fizzban as well. So as you can see here, they are different from Dragonborn. They are basically, I think it's, what does it say here? They are, when a metallic dragon egg has been stolen and corrupted by Takesis, or whatever her name is, basically the Kryn version of Tiamat, and they corrupt the egg, and that's what causes a Draconian to hatch. So a little bit different than, just a traditional Dragonborn or half-dragon. So here we can see the Auric Draconian here, right? This is the gold dragon version, which is obviously very apparent from just the facial features and the frills and things. This looks to be, again, it does specifically list sorcerer, so this is more of the caster type. True sight, immunity to the charmed condition. It radiates a commanding presence in a 20-foot radius. This is its aura of command. If a Draconian in the aura that can see or hear it can't be charmed, has advantage on saving throws to avoid or end frightened condition on itself. All Draconians also have death throws, kind of, this is a standard ability we've seen in the past. But if you're unfamiliar, basically upon dropping to 0 hit points, it essentially blows up and does some form of damage. For example, this particular one is creatures within 30 feet. Its magical essence lashes out as ball lightning. Sorry, the closest creature within 30 feet of it before arcing out up to 2 other creatures. So this is like a ball of lightning hits one target and then arcs out. Dexterity 14 saving, dex saving throw, or 2d8 lightning damage, and a stun effect. On a success, half damage and no stun. It can make 3 rend or energy rays attacks. Rends are just basically d12 claw attacks. Energy Ray is a 60-foot range force damage attack, which does a d10 plus 3, so it's almost like Eldritch Blast-ish in nature. It has a Noxious Breath, so it does have a breath weapon, which is a 15-foot cone that's a con save or poison damage, and grants a level of exhaustion. That's pretty nuts. And on a success, you take half damage, don't get exhaustion, and you're immune to all Draconian's Noxious Breath for 24 hours. And then again, as we know, this one is a sorcerer. It does have some spell casting, invisibility, and mage hand at will, dimension door, disguise self, ascending twice a day, dominate person once per day. This is a solid, this challenge rating 6. This is a solid enemy, right? This is pretty good. For challenge rating 6, it's got a large variety of options in what it can do. You've got some melee options, but I mean, it's attack. While the rend it's a D12. That's a solid amount of damage, even if you don't have, only have a +2 bonus to it. A D12 could still be pretty swingy in the damage department. It has the AoE damage, or the slight AoE damage upon death. It has immunity to things. It has true sight, so you're going to be seeing things that are invisible and things of that nature. It's got this aura that it projects that helps its allies, an AoE in the noxious breath, some spell casting. This is a pretty solid enemy. And again, definitely worth sampling if you're going to reskin it in some way to use in another aspect of a different campaign. Then we have the Baz Draconian. I think they are all listed at the top here. So this is Baz, Bozek, Capek, Sivek, Auric, and then a human. So the Baz is the brass dragon version. Now this is a much more foot soldiery. It's only a challenge rating 1/2. It can't even fly. It does have wings, but it just allows it to basically have almost like a feather fall effect, right? When it isn't incapacitated, it subtracts 100 feet from the fall damage. It also has death throws. This is just each creature within 5 feet of it must make a con save or be restrained as it releases a petrified gas. The creature must repeat the save on the following turn. On a success, it ends. If it fails both saves, it is petrified for 1 minute. And then it has, the Draconian can see a dragon that isn't hostile to it. It has advantage on attack rolls, and then just makes 2 short sword attacks. But again, if there's a dragon around, it can possibly make those attacks with advantage. Next up is the Bozak Draconian, which is a bronze dragon. This looks to be, it's a sorcerer as well. It does have wings, but does not appear to have flying speeds of any kind, which I thought was interesting. Not even... the Baz here has the controlled fall, but the Bozak doesn't even have that. Again, dark vision here, death throws. This one is, its bones explode, and it's a 10-foot radius, make a dexterity saving throw, 2d8 force damage. Oh, it does have a glide ability, okay. So it subtracts 100 feet from the fall when calculating the damage, and it can move 2 feet horizontally for every 1 foot it descends. 2 trident attacks or 2 lightning discharge attacks. Trident is nothing too crazy, pretty standard. Lightning discharge is just a ranged spell attack that does 3d6 lightning damage, and then a little bit of spell casting in once per day in large reduce invisibility, stinking cloud, and web. Again, a very strong contender for a challenge rating 2 creature with a lot of versatility here as well. We have the Capek Draconian. This is a copper dragon one. I really love the art on this. This is giving me very much rogue vibes to it. And this is a challenge rating 3. Immunity to poison. This one has death throws as well. It dissolves into a pool of acid. Each creature within 5 feet must make a dex save or be covered in acid for 1 minute. Creature covered in acid takes 2d6 acid damage at the start of each of its turns. A creature can use its action to scrape off or wash the acid off of another creature. So yeah, it doesn't do half, but if you do fail the saving throw, you will be, again, potentially up to a minute, taking 2d6 acid damage a turn unless you take an action to remove it. It also has the same glide ability that the Bozak Dragonborn has. It has multi-attack. It can make 2 dagger attacks. If both attacks hit the same creature, the target must make a DC 12 con save or become poisoned until the end of the target's next turn. While poisoned in this way, it is also paralyzed. And then its standard dagger damage also does poison damage, 2d6 poison damage. And then the last one here is the Sivak Draconian, which is the Silver Dragonborn based one. And does this one say it doesn't have a specific subtype? So we have death throws. For this one is, if it is reduced to 0 hit points by a creature that is large or smaller, it crumbles into dust and that forms a spectral shrieking image of the creature that killed it. This lasts for 1 minute. Each creature hostile to the Draconian within 10 feet of the image must make a wisdom save or be frightened for a minute. On a successful save, they aren't frightened, and it ends the effect. They can also repeat the saving throw at the end of each of their turns. It makes 2 serrated sword attacks. These do 2d8 plus 4 damage and also 1 tail attack, which is a d8 plus 4 bludgeoning, and if they're large or smaller, they must make a strength save or be knocked prone. And then it also has shape theft as a reaction. After it kills a medium or smaller humanoid, it magically cloaks itself in an illusion to look and feel like that creature while retaining its game statistics. This transformation lasts until the Draconian dies, or it uses a bonus action to use to end it. So this is actually a very strong melee fighter, but with also some pretty good deceptive abilities here and the ability to basically just cloak into something else. Then we have the Dragon Army troops. Nothing too crazy to write home about here. It's just, again, more NPCs within the Dragon Army. So first off, we have the Dragon Army officer. Again, a humanoid of some kind. Again, has that Draconic Devotion ability that we've seen a couple times here, where if it sees a dragon, it has advantage, that's not hostile to it, has advantage on all attack rolls. This one uses a lance, 2 vicious lance attacks, and assault orders as its multi-attack. The lance, interestingly enough, here only does a d10, not a d12 like a traditional lance, but it also deals fire damage. Has a heavy crossbow here that also deals fire damage, and then assault order is it shouts orders up to 2 other creatures within 60 feet. This recharges on a 5/6. If a target has the Draconic Devotion trait and hears it, they can use a reaction to make a melee attack. And then again, we have the more grunt soldier level. Again, also Draconic Devotion. 2 longsword or javelin attacks. The only kind of major thing here is they each do an additional d4 fire damage. Then we have Dragonels. Now, we did actually get a Dragonel in Fizban's Treasury of Dragon. These are 2 specific types of Dragonel, the Dragon Army Dragonel and the Wasteland Dragonel. So it says they're distantly related to chromatic and dragons, chromatic metallic dragons. They resemble their form. Dragonels from the volcanic mountains surrounding Sanction are closely related to red dragons, resembling them in scale, coloration, and general shape. They are cruel and selfish. You can see the one on the screen here. It is a challenge rating 3. It is large size, resistant to fire damage, does have blind sight as well as flyby, which is one of the most powerful abilities where you can basically not provoke attacks of opportunity when it flies in and out of an enemy's reach. And then it has its rend ability here. It can do 2 of those with multi-attack, 2d6 plus 3 slashing, or a d6 fire and a d6 fire damage, I'm sorry. And then we have the Wasteland Dragonel. The northern wastes of Ancelon are home to Wasteland Dragonels. They mostly closely resemble copper dragons. So again, resistance to acid damage, which makes sense. Flyby as well. And then it also has the rend ability, but also has acid spit, a 60-foot range attack that it can do once per turn that does 5d6 plus 3 acid damage. It's also nice to see variations on Dragonels, a creature we just recently received in Fizban's. We are now getting additional options for in these 2 Dragonels, so it gives us ideas of what we could do to possibly customize, make more in our game. So, Astarian drones are constructs, basically here. This is the only one in the book here. It kind of is like a weird insectoids style construct. And then as you can see here, it has a lot of construct-based immunities. Immunity to lightning, poison, charmed, exhausted, frightened, paralyzed, poison condition. Blind sight, it has spider climb, as one could imagine, given the design, as well as unusual nature. It can make 2 claw attacks that do a d8 plus 5 piercing plus a d8 lightning damage. And if the target is medium or smaller, they are considered grappled. And it also has crystalline spit, which recharges on a 5/6. That is a 5-foot wide line, 20 feet long. Each creature in it must make a dex save or take 46 lightning damage and be restrained by crystalline gel, a lightning gel that hardens into crystal. While the creature it's restrained until the crystal is destroyed, which has an AC 15 and 15 hit points. On a successful save, they take half damage and aren't restrained. Next up, we have more soldiers here. So these are rank and file kind of troops. Challenge rating 1/2. Not too much different than your traditional kind of NPC guard or veteran that you see in the other books. However, this one does have its unique ability being hold the line. If an ally within 5 feet of the soldier must make a saving throw, it can use its reaction to encourage that ally, granting it advantage on the saving throw. Here we have Cansaldi Fire Eyes. This is a named specific NPC, the leader of the Red Dragon Army Offensive in Salamnia. So they are challenge rating 11. They are an evil cleric. They do have some special equipment here as well. It says has a glowing ruby embedded in her left eye socket. This functions as her eye and gives her true sight. The gem can't be removed while she's alive. When she dies, a creature can remove the gem as an action, and it functions as a gem of seeing. She can make 2 pike attacks and use Flame Burst. The pikes, again, these ones also are dealing D10 as opposed to a D12 piercing damage, plus 3d10 radiant damage just each time she hits with those pikes. Then we have Flame Burst. She hurls magical flames at a creature within 60 feet. They must make a dex save or take 2d10 fire damage. Also igniting on fire, which takes an action to put out, taking a d10 fire damage on their turn, each turn until they put it out. On a successful save, they take half damage and aren't set on fire. As a cleric, she does have some spell casting here, Light, Spare the Dying, and Thaumaturgy at will, just a bunch of cantrips. And then once per day, Blade Barrier, Dispel Magic, Flame Strike, Lesser Restoration, and Revivify. She also has the bonus action Dragon Queen's Favor, where she can choose one creature, herself or a creature within 60 feet, to get to magically regain 2d12 plus 4 hit points. And she can do that every turn as a bonus action. Next up, we have a Kender Skirmisher, which we can also see the Hoopak here, their specific weapon, and here we can see one using it. Again, just another kind of NPC stat block here. The big thing they have is immunity to the frightened condition, and then they have the Hoopak, their special ability here, as well as the Kender Taunt, right? Launches a barrage of insults at a creature within 60 feet. If they can hear them, they must make a wisdom saving throw or have disadvantage on attack rolls until the end of its next turn. Also can hide or disengage as a bonus action, and then they do give us a D4 taunts here for Kender to say if you need to use one, if you don't have one prepared. Did the Cataclysm have a face? Because I think you might be twins. All right, then we have, I think it's Lozette. Again, another named NPC. Also the art for this one, fantastic. Member of the Mages of High Sorcery. Let's see what they've got. They're a wizard. Immunity to poison and poison condition. Ignores a creature's resistance to poison damage. That's a very cool and unique ability. This is, I think, the first time we've seen this. We've seen certain things, and we've seen certain player abilities like Elemental Adept that allow you to ignore resistance, but we've never seen an ability that allows you to ignore immunity to a condition. And this one, this character does, or this NPC does. Toxic Mastery. Ignores a creature's resistance to poison damage. Oh, sorry. Ignores the creature's resistance to poison damage. I don't know where I got immunity from. Maybe that's just my brain. In my mind, that would be a cooler ability, I should say. But again, I don't... Actually, now that I think about it, I don't know if we've seen an enemy have an ability to, overcome resistance to poison damage. Obviously, again, like we've said, players can do that with things like Elemental Adept. I don't know if there's been enemies that have had that. Either way, it's nice to see. It adds a little more tension to, especially if a character is reliant on their resistance to poison damage. His multi-attack here makes 3 Withering Blast attacks and can use Miasma if it's available, which has a recharge. Also can replace one of the attacks with a use of spellcasting. Withering Blast is a melee or ranged attack that does 2d12 plus 5 necrotic damage. Miasma, which recharges on a 4 to 6, so pretty decent chance of getting this back. Conjures a billowing cloud of purple fog and a 20-foot radius sphere centered on a point within 120 feet of himself. That area is considered heavily obscured. The creature that starts its turn within it or enters the space for the first time on a turn must make a DC 17 con save. On a failed save, it takes 60-12 poison damage and is poisoned until the start of its next turn. On success, half damage and isn't poisoned. It lasts for a minute until he ends it early or until he uses it again. A strong wind can disperse it. As far as the spell casting, DC 17 on those spells. At will detect magic, light, and prestidigitation. Twice a day, Dimension Door, and Mage Armor. Once per day, Arcane Eye, Dominate Person, and Wall of Force. And then it has a reaction here, Noxious Rebuke, 3 times per day. When a creature within 60 feet damages him in any way, it doesn't have to be melee, He retaliates with a spray of foul purple mist. The creature must make a DC 17 con save or take 2d10 poison damage on a failed save and half on a success. Then we have the man himself, Lord Soth, the jacked up, improved Death Knight. Here, challenge rating 19. Again, has a lot of the abilities that a base Death Knight has, but then has some additional things as well. Immunity, necrotic, and poison, as well as the exhausted, frightened, and poisoned condition. 3 legendary resistances, magic resistance. If he's incapacitated, he and undead creatures of his choice within 60 feet are immune to features that turn undead. So he's basically an AoE turn resistance there. Also unusual nature. And then he can make 3 Forsaken Brand attacks, which is a, it looks to be his like mace that you can see that he's wielding here. It does a d8 plus 6 bludgeoning damage plus 4d8 necrotic damage, and the creature can't regain hit points until the start of his next turn. He can do Cataclysmic Fire once per day, which he picks a point within 120 feet and hurls a ball of magic fire. It explodes in a 20-foot radius sphere. The creatures must make a DC 19 dex save or take 10d6 fire damage and 10d6 necrotic damage. So this is like a super uber fireball almost mixed with like a meteor swarm or meteor shower. Additionally, any medium or humanoid creature killed by that ability raises as a skeleton under a corpse under his control. Wow, he says immediately, right? Immediately, yeah, as well as every corpse of humanoid within the sphere. So it's not even necessarily people killed by it. Also just corpses within that sphere that are humanoid raises skeletons under his control. They act on his initiative. Let's see. Absent any commander, the skeleton tries to kill any non-dead undead creatures with it, that it encounters. He's got a DC 19 on his spellcasting here. He can cast Command at 3rd level at will, Dispel Magic and Hold Person at 3rd level twice per day, and Banishment at 6th level once per day. Also has Word of Death once per day. He points at a creature within 60 feet, and they magically commands them to just die. They must make a DC 19 con save or take 100 necrotic damage, half on a, They must make a DC 19 con save, taking 100 necrotic damage on a failed save or half on a success. If the target is reduced to 0 hit points, it dies. And then he also has legendary actions, of which he has 3. One is Implacable Maneuver. He moves up to his speed and commands a mount he is riding to move up to its speed. Does not provoke attacks of opportunity. If he or his mount move within 5 feet of a creature during that movement, he can force that creature to make a DC 20 strength save or be knocked prone. 2 actions to do an attack with his weapon, or 3 to cast a spell. Then we have Red Ruin here, which is a specific Dragonel. I think it's, or no, sorry, specific commander, but rides a Dragonel. Known for incredible awareness and reflexes, this Dragonel flying ace Red Ruin leads the Red Dragon's army airborne forces. So again, a challenge rating 10 NPC here, resistance to fire damage, also has Draconic Devotion, and it has some mount-based abilities, right? Mount Combat Master. When mounted, any creature targets her mount with an attack, she can cause to target her instead. And then when Red Ruin or her mount makes a dexterity saving throw to take half damage from an effect, they take no damage on a success and half on a failure. So this is actually interesting to see. This is called Mounted Evasion. This answers an age-old question that I've had a bunch when it comes down to Mounted Combatant, the feat. Because as it stands, it basically has this ability that says if your mount makes a dexterity saving throw and it succeeds, it basically gives it evasion. And the question I always had is if I'm riding on my mount and my mount can somehow dodge out of the way so that it takes no damage and I'm literally moved with it because I'm on its back, do I also get the benefits of the evasion as well? Do we only have to make 1 saving throw? Or do I at least get the benefits of evasion because I have invested in this feat? And it seems like this mounted evasion kind of gives that to Red Ruin, right? When Red Ruin or her mount makes dexterity saving throw, they basically, again, have the advantages or benefits of evasion. She can make 3 Ember Lance attacks. Her lances are actually D12 in damage and do also an additional 2d6 fire damage. And if the creature is medium or smaller, it must make a strength save or be knocked prone. She also has an explosive hand crossbow, which is pretty awesome. It fires an explosive bolt at a point within 120 feet. When the bolt reaches that point, or if it hits an object early, it detonates in a 20-foot radius sphere. Creatures in that sphere must make a dexterity saving throw or take 10d6 fire damage. So it's essentially like a fireball in the form of a crossbow bolt. Now that recharges on a 5/6, so she could potentially, in theory, have an unlimited amount of those based on how many times you get it to recharge. But that is only once per turn, whereas the lance is 3 times a turn. Explosive crossbow bolts are definitely going to be something I'm fully introducing into my games as well. Only a couple things left here. We have the Skeletal Knight. These are basically something that's a little more powerful than a traditional skeleton. And they're basically minions of a Death Knight. In this particular instance, more often than not, we're referring to Lord Soth. As you can see, they are challenge rating 7. The art for them also looks fantastic. They wear plate armor, which could potentially be useful for your party. If you manage to find one and defeat one, then potentially your party member might get access to plate mail if they didn't have it already. Immunity to poison and exhausted in the poisoned condition. Undead Fortitude is this sort of get back up mechanic, right? If they're reduced to 0 hit points, they must make a con save of DC 5 plus the damage they took. And then, unless it's bludgeoning damage or from a critical hit, if they make that saving throw, they go to 1 hit point instead of 0. They also have unusual nature, and they're multi-attack. They can make 3 enervating blade attacks or throwing axe attacks in any combination. Enervating blade is sort of their long sword, does 3d6 plus 5 necrotic damage. And if it's a creature, it can't heal until the start of the Skeletal Knight's next turn, or the throwing axes, which just have a range of 20-60 and do 2d8 plus 5 slashing. And lastly, we have Worston Kern, which is a very funny name to say. And he's the standard bearer of Lord Soth. His art does exist somewhere in the book. They just don't happen to have it right here. He is undead. A challenge rating 14, immune to poison, exhausted, frightened, in the poison condition. Also has undead fortitude, similar to what we just saw with the Skeletal Knights, as well as unusual nature. He can make 3 banner pike attacks or use terrifying litany if it's available. Banner pike does d10 plus 5 piercing plus 3d8 necrotic, and if they're humanoid, they must make a charisma saving throw or be cursed. The curse lasts until it's lifted by remove curse or similar magic. Black thorny rose stems sprout from the creature's body while it is cursed, imposing disadvantage on its ability checks and attack rolls and having its speed. A creature that succeeds is immune for 24 hours. Reminder that this curse, if you fail the charisma saving throw, is a permanent curse until you have it removed. It will be ever present. Also, he does have some spell casting with a DC 16 on the save, once per day Dispel Magic and once per day Wall of Stone. And then Terrifying Litany, which recharges on a 5/6. He recites names of souls slain by Soth and his company. Each creature that isn't undead within 30 feet of her must make a DC 16 Wisdom saving throw. On a failure, take 4d10 psychic damage and is frightened of worse than for 1 minute. On a success, they take half damage and aren't frightened. And then again, at the end of each of your turns, you can make that save as well. So there you go, folks. That is all of the new monsters and kind of NPCs and things included in Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen. I gotta say, I am a large fan. I like undead, and maybe it's because I love playing paladins and clerics. I like undead because I like fighting them because I don't know, it's kind of just like what their bag is, I guess. But I really like some of these creatures quite a bit. I love the options for additional dragon elves. I think that's huge. I like variety and options for that. I like this guy, this kind of undead bear hedgehog thing, which again, doesn't necessarily in my mind seem to be specifically tied to the world of Dragonlance. That could be an easy drag and drop into another campaign, as is the death dragons, which are pretty cool. They look awesome with just the violet flames coming out of like the black skeletal body. Like, this just looks really cool. And the WizKid mini of it is also pretty awesome. And then again, like I said, the Draconians could be really good replacements if you need to swap out for something else. Lord Soth, I feel like they did him justice, I think. I mean, again, I don't have a large history with him personally. But, you know, he's more than just a traditional Death Knight, which is something that a lot of people were worried he was just going to be an exact carbon copy of the Death Knight from the 5e Player's Handbook. Or, sorry, Monster Manual, rather. So I like to see the updates that they made to him, making him a little more imposing. And then even things just like the Skeletal Knights are pretty nice. Just some higher quality challenge rating 7 undead for, you know, like I said, they don't have to be tied specifically to a standard bearer or to Lord Soth, but just these skeletal knights of challenge rating 7 are a nice higher level undead that you could throw at your party members, and it would be pretty cool. And then again, I also like Worston Kern's ability here where he just can give out this nasty curse with this pike, and it's just like, hope somebody has remove curse or similar magic. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with disadvantage on ability checks, attack rolls, and half speed until you get it fixed. So anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Were you a fan of these new monsters? Was one a standout favorite for you over any of the others? Like I said, I'm always in the market for new monsters. That's always fun stuff to be able to add and build out that repertoire that you have of things to throw at your players. So, I don't know. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below, and I will see you all next time.